It's good to see all of you here this morning. Let's start by welcoming each other with a round of applause, shall we, everyone? It's good to see all of you here. Now, this forum is co-hosted by the Energy Market Authority of Singapore and the International Energy Agency as a part of the Singapore International Energy Week 2024. My name's Ravi, and I'm proud to be the host of the entire morning's proceedings. Now, the theme for today's forum is Unlocking Southeast Asia's Decarbonization Potential. The speakers today will discuss the opportunities and challenges on decarbonization in the Asia-Pacific and, of course, beyond. To start today's program, ladies and gentlemen, I take pride in inviting up on stage Dr. Tan See Leng, Minister for Manpower and Second Minister for Trade and Industry, Singapore. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Dr. Tan.
Honorable Ministers and Excellencies of the IEA family, Dr. Fateh Birol, Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. Ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to all of you. It's a tremendous pleasure to welcome all of you to the Singapore International Energy Agency Ministerial Forum at the Singapore International Energy Week, or SIEW for short. This is the 8th time that we've held the Ministerial Forum, but this is the first time we're doing so after having launched the IEA Regional Cooperation Center in Singapore. Thank you, IEA. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a milestone for IEA, for Southeast Asia, and also for Singapore. It marks a new chapter for the IEA on the year of its 50th anniversary, and it's the first center outside the IEA's HQ in Paris. The center's location in Southeast Asia also underscores the region's importance in the global energy transition, and it signals the IEA's commitment to helping the entire region decarbonize. And the regional center is also the first energy-focused international organization in Singapore. I would like to express my deepest appreciation and thanks to Dr. Birol for his visionary leadership and strong support in making this center a reality. And all of this happened less than 24 months after it was first conceived. So thank you very much. I also want to extend my deepest appreciation to all IEA members for their steadfast support for the center. Some members have gone above and beyond by pledging funding to make the center a reality. And in this regard, I wish to acknowledge the contributions of Australia, Canada, Denmark, Japan, the Republic of Korea, Netherlands, New Zealand, and the United States. Thank you very much. I also understand that members are also discussing seconding their officers to the center, which we welcome wholeheartedly. And last but not least, please also join me in extending the warmest welcome to the incoming head of the IEA Regional Cooperation Center, Ms. Tan Soo Eun. We look forward to her contributions and the leadership of the center. She's chosen to sit in a very strategic corner right in front. So I think for all the region's decarbonization targets, we should all be looking at her. Now, energy demand in Southeast Asia is expected to grow by more than 60% by 2050, and this is in tandem with economic growth. Yet, renewable energy only comprises just under 20% of the region's energy mix. to realize our net zero ambitions, we must act fast and we must act now. Now, let me offer 3 suggestions on how the IEA can support the region by accelerating Southeast Asia's decarbonization journey, by advancing regional energy connectivity, and by unlocking access to financing for the energy transition. First, on accelerating decarbonization strategies. Most ASEAN member states have committed to reaching net zero by 2060 or earlier. Singapore has committed to reaching net zero by 2050. Now, there are master plans, there are strategies developed to help us get there. But how do we build the capabilities to execute on these ambitious plans? And this is where IEA's expertise will be most relevant. They can help by providing both policy and technical advice to help countries understand how pragmatic it would take to decarbonize, while maintaining affordability, keeping costs in check, and at all times, energy security. Take, for example, CCS, or carbon capture and storage, which the IEA has acknowledged to be a viable and important decarbonization pathway for hard-to-abate sectors. Our region is blessed with abundant CCS storage potential, and it's waiting to be unlocked with the right mix of regulatory, policy, and financing instruments. We see both demand and supply forces at play, with countries like Australia, Malaysia, and Indonesia being well-positioned for storage hubs, and other emitter nations like Japan, South Korea, and Singapore providing demand. The IEA can certainly help countries ascertain which low-carbon technologies and decarbonization pathways to adopt, as well as how to align standards and certifications to ensure interoperability. And all of this will be critical for collective regional decarbonization. Second, we hope that IEA can support the realization of our vision of an ASEAN power grid. As a key regional initiative, the ASEAN power grid can enhance energy security while strengthening economic development and renewable energy investments in the region. This would be a strong nudge and support the region's transition away from fossil fuels. Now, the overall potential, ladies and gentlemen, to unlock energy connectivity cannot be overstated. The ASEAN Centre for Energy and the heads of ASEAN power utilities have jointly analysed that there can be approximately 30 gigawatts worth of potential interconnections to support cross-border power trading. If we can develop these interconnections, it will be a collective win for all member states, and it will catalyze a clean energy revolution. And I want to add, not just ASEAN member states, it would also be a collective win for Australia as well. So Singapore is doing its part to advance the region's electricity trading journey. As I announced earlier this morning, EMA will grant a conditional approval to Sun Cable to import up to 1.75 gigawatts of low-carbon electricity from Australia's Northern Territory to Singapore. This project, ladies and gentlemen, will also be a meaningful complement to our plans for an ASEAN power grid, as it serves an additional source of power, not just for Singapore, but eventually for the region. But there's one, of course, essential prerequisite. For clean energy to power our homes and factories at scale, we will need to enhance our region's transmission infrastructure. And that was the reason why the ASEAN Ministers meeting, the ASEAN Energy Ministers meeting in Vientiane last month, all of the ASEAN energy ministers present agreed to prioritize the development of an ASEAN framework on subsea power cables. And just as we have prioritized economic integration in ASEAN, we should work together with the IEA to advance energy integration within the region. And we welcome other partners from beyond the region to support our efforts as well. Lastly, to harness Southeast Asia's decarbonization potential, we must also mobilize financing towards supporting green and transition projects. As a regional financial hub, Singapore stands ready to support the IEA's work on green and transition finance. Under the IEA's announced pledges scenario, or APS, average annual clean energy investment in Southeast Asia needs to double to almost $130 billion by 2030 from the current $72 billion over the last 3 years. The IEA's findings that Southeast Asia attracted the second lowest level of investments in renewable energy globally over the past 5 years is also concerning and worrisome. We have to, ladies and gentlemen, accelerate our investments in renewable energy. The Centre is well placed to work with both financial institutions and multilateral development banks in the region on initiatives that can give investors the clarity and the confidence to commit longer-term capital to decarbonization projects. This can include the development of region and country contextualized decarbonization pathways to serve as a credible reference for financial institutions to guide investment decisions for the energy transition. In closing, it has really been a pleasure to share the excitement of the IEA's new chapter in Singapore and with so many of the IEA family members here today. We have seen our partnership with the IEA grow from strength to strength since Singapore assumed the role of country coordinator for the ASEAN IEA Energy Cooperation in 2011 and became an IEA association country in 2016. Today, the IEA Forum remains one of the most popular programs at SIEW. And the training programs have benefited more than 1,500 participants from over 35 countries. And that has been our first chapter together. As we turn the page to the next chapter, I look forward to the continued close and even closer collaboration to create a sustainable future for our children and for our children's children. And it is my earnest hope that their story would soon feature new milestones in Southeast Asia's accelerated decarbonization journey, advancements in regional energy connectivity, and pathways that can access financing for the energy transition that have been unlocked. Thank you once again, and I wish everyone a productive forum ahead.
Thank you, Minister, sir. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to deliver his opening remarks, here is the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, Dr. Fatih Birol.
Minister Tan, ministers, ambassadors, dear colleagues, a very good morning to all of you. It is a great honor this morning again to share with you some of the thoughts we have from the IEA perspective about our new office in Singapore and about Southeast Asia. Dear colleagues, I spoke at length yesterday morning. I will not go too much in detail, but a couple of points and thanks I want to register this morning. First of all, my thanks, as I mentioned yesterday morning, goes to Mr. Prime Minister Wong. As I mentioned yesterday, the first idea of focusing on Southeast Asia came from the days of 2019 when he was the head of the EMA and I was the chief economist. I mentioned this yesterday, and after that I get a lot of questions from the press. You would expect the question was, how did he convince you? What are the important things about the elements of Southeast Asia, energy and climate? The question was, what was the name of the restaurant? So this was the main question came. I can tell it was a very modest restaurant, a very friendly and cordial discussion, and I am thankful to his vision. I am going to see him very shortly today to express my gratitude in person. But my thanks also go to Dr. Tan. In the last 2 years, I have rarely exchanged messages as much as I did with Dr. Tan. He's a wonderful, wonderful friend of IEA, a very good leader, and he was able to address many challenges we had in front of opening this center, expected, unexpected challenges. Thank you very much, Dr. Tan. And he made one compliment to IEA. We get a lot of compliments, in addition to not compliments. And his compliment was, it was at the G20 meeting, he said, partnerships are important. We invest in partnerships, but our investment in partnership with the IEA was the best one with the return. So I was very, very happy with this, especially knowing that many of you may not know, but talking about the investments and partnerships, Dr. Tan is one of the most successful businessmen at the global scale who left the business and joined the public service, which is very, very rare. Normally it goes the other way around, from public service to private sector, but he left the private sector, came to help the public, and one of his support, one of his tasks was to help us to build this, open this center. Thank you very much, Dr. Tan. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much, sir. Dear colleagues, I also wanted to thank our member countries. Most of the member countries, ambassadors are here, our board members are here. I want to thank, on behalf of all of them, our governing board chair is here, Mr. Hoffman, as well as different members from different countries. Thank you very much to all of them. It is not a usual one of the decisions we have in the boards, going to another continent, opening another office. Thank you very much to all the colleagues from the IEA board helping us to open this center. When we we always do a competitive process for hiring the staff for the center, I was really amazed that so many people wanted to come here. Overwhelming number of applications, and as a result of competitive process, we have here Mrs. Tan, SIEW. We are looking forward to work with her. I already had a good discussion with SIEW yesterday evening to tell her how we work. And what are how should I say, the working culture of the IEA is slightly different from other international organizations, and I am sure we will work together. And with other colleagues we already hired for the center to start. Dear colleagues, I wanted to once again make everybody understand that our headquarters in Paris, and will be in Paris. We are very happy to be in Paris, a beautiful city. We just finished organizing a major Olympic Games in Paris. I hope you all had a chance to follow it with beautiful results. But we thought, in addition to Paris, we want to grow. If we want to consider the IEA as a international energy agency, we have to look more and more the other partners around the world, and it is in that direction we not only open the doors of the IEA to have new members of the IEA countries, new governments, we also open this center. Why Southeast Asia? I just give you 3 numbers, very important numbers in my view. In the next 10 years, Southeast Asia economy will grow, continue to grow after 2 decades of very strong growth, that in 10 years it will be one of the top 5 economies of the world, major economic power. Second, in terms of population, it is reaching around 2030, 750 million, almost 750 million people living in this region. A huge, huge, huge size of population. And in terms of energy, Southeast Asia needs energy because economic growth means energy. In the next 10 years, about 25% of global energy demand growth, world's energy demand growth, 1/4 will come from this region. In terms of its power, the growth power, it is only second to India. Then second one, India, second one, Southeast Asia. So looking at these numbers, we thought it is important to focus in this region. My colleague, Mr. Tim Gould, our able chief economist, will give you in a few minutes more detailed these numbers, but it is impossible not to agree how critical this region is in terms of energy and climate. Now the question is, energy demand will grow, but with which technologies, with which fuels we are going to meet that demand growth with the minimum impact on climate and for the prosperity of the people and to make the right choices. It is the reason we decided to work with this region much more closely. And for the project, for the center, we have many projects in mind. I was discussing with the Minister Bowen this morning, ranging from the clean energy supply chain security to, as Minister Tan mentioned, the interconnection of the power grids, improving energy efficiency, small modular reactors, the integration of the renewables in the electricity grids. There are many areas that we have a worldwide known expertise. We want to share this expertise with the countries here and learn from them. This is our agenda. Of course, we will come with a work program, clear work program very soon, and you will see one of the things that I am very proud at the IEA is we are a nimble organization. Very quick, move very quick, and therefore you will see this center will have the colors of the International Energy Agency. So, dear colleagues, I also wanted to thank one more person that made this entire project happen, because many of the names I mentioned you already knew or you already heard. This person is my chief of staff, Amos Bromhead, who worked behind the scenes a lot, maybe too much sometimes, every morning coming to me, this happened, that happened. So I am really thankful to Amos to make this happen, to talk with his Singaporean colleagues and the members of our board. Thank you very much, Amos, for your great work. And here, I wanted to once again say that I myself and the 450 members of the IEA Secretariat in Paris are very proud that we are inaugurating our office in Singapore. Thank you very much, Dr. Tan. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Birol. We invite you to remain on stage, sir, for a photo opportunity to commemorate this very special moment. Now, ladies and gentlemen, joining Dr. Birol, we'd like to invite back up on stage Dr. Tan See Ling, Minister for Manpower and Second Minister for Trade and Industry, Singapore, the Honourable Chris Bowen, Minister for Climate Change and Energy of Australia, IEA family ministers and ambassadors, ministers and ambassadors from ASEAN countries, of course, EMA senior management and representatives. I invite you all to make your way up on stage, please. Could we have some of you up on stage, please, just to balance up the photograph? All right. So which camera are we looking at? All right. So all eyes on this lovely lady in front of you, so we don't have your eyes straying away to the wrong cameras. Okay, a little closer. Okay, at my count of 3, are we ready? Okay, big smiles. 1, 2, and 3. Here we are. It's one more photograph. Okay, big smiles. Thank you, everyone. Big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Distinguished guests right in front of you. We invite Minister Bowen to remain on stage, ladies and gentlemen, for this next segment. It is with pride, ladies and gentlemen, that I invite the Honourable Chris Bowen, Minister for Climate Change and Energy Australia. In a moment, he will deliver his keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you and good morning, and I'm delighted to be here with you at Singapore Energy Week. Delighted for a number of reasons. Firstly, because Singapore Energy Week is an important gathering that allows us to focus on the joint challenges and opportunities in our region of the energy transition. Secondly, because it's a good opportunity for me to catch up with so many friends, particularly Xi Ling, also Kim Yong and Grace and other members of the Singaporean Cabinet who are such good friends of Australia and vital partners, as well as friends from around the world. And thirdly, because I've been able to be here to mark the next step in Suncable's work to connect Australia and our renewable energy capacity with Singapore, which Xi Ling has announced this morning, for which we're grateful and which I'll say a bit more about in a moment. And of course, because it also enables me to participate in this ministerial forum with my friend Fatty, but also participate and welcome the opening of Singapore of the IEA office, which Australia has been delighted to support from the beginning of the discussions. It's an important milestone. I want to congratulate Fatty for your perseverance. It's not been easy, not been quick, but you have maintained your course from the time that you first raised it as an important opportunity. And I certainly welcome this opening. And I think it's now incumbent on all of us to work with Sue Earn and the IEA to make the Singaporean office of the IEA a meaningful, substantive and important part of the world's energy infrastructure. Personally, I'd welcome a meeting of the governing board in the Singapore office. I think that would be a very good step forward. Of course, Paris, as Fatty said, will always be the headquarters of the IEA, but we want to make this a very important part of the IEA infrastructure and holding a meeting of the governing board would be important, not just because it's more easy for me to get to, but also because it would be a very important symbol of the IEA's commitment across the entire governing board to Southeast Asia. Now, my friends, of course, energy transition is central to the agendas of all our governments, respective governments. It's central to our economic success, central to the prosperity of our region. The government of which I'm a member recognises that unchecked climate change represents a paramount national security challenge, for example. That's why the Prime Minister invited me to serve on the National Security Committee of the Cabinet when we came to office, the first Minister for Climate Change and Energy to serve on our National Security Committee. In Australia, we often think of national security through the prism of the Pacific, our Pacific family, which is so important to us. But of course, it's also acute in Southeast Asia when you consider how many millions of people live on low-lying archipelagos that are subject to the impacts of ravishing change, of climate change. And of course, as the IEA has pointed out, the success of decarbonisation in Southeast Asia is in many ways key to the success of global decarbonisation. Energy demand will increase substantially in this region in coming decades as economic growth continues very strongly. And of course, that's a very good thing. As the IEA has previously estimated, Southeast Asia needs about 229 gigawatts of new wind and solar this decade to meet that demand while decarbonising. And so again, that's why it's so important that the IEA has opened its office in Singapore today. The IEA's influence on the global dialogue to collaborate on energy security is very significant, and it is only a step forward today, which is very welcome, and indeed we must now work towards making more meaningful. While we have also been, it's why we've been strong supporters of the hub in the discussions in the IEA and also through the commitment of 800,000 Australian dollars to support its operating costs and a targeted work program that will benefit the Asia Pacific and will continue to support in coming years. So we'll be taking a very strong interest alongside other ASEAN nations in the IEA to support the centre in delivering outcomes for the Asia Pacific region. Now in Australia, our approach can best be described as threefold. Firstly, to decarbonise our own economy, as is the case with all of us. Secondly, to use our advantages in renewable energy to help other countries on the decarbonisation journey. And finally, to play a modest but meaningful role in the renewable energy supply chain, as we believe that the best supply chain is a diverse supply chain. Like all of us, our domestic decarbonisation journey faces headwinds and plenty of challenges. No big economic reform comes easily. But we're making good progress. Renewable energy was just over a third of our energy grid when we came to office 2.5 years ago. The latest figures released 2 weeks ago show that it is now on average 42%. It's 46% in the quarter, and for one 5-minute period hit 75%. Our reverse auction capacity investment scheme for renewable energy is massively oversubscribed, and it's supporting 32 gigawatts of new renewable dispatchable energy between now and 2030 to help us get to our 82% renewable energy target. We launched early pilots at the first national auction of our capacity investment scheme in May, and we will roll out auctions every 6 months. Yesterday I was in Sydney and I announced the next round of auctions would be increased from our anticipated 7 gigawatts to 10 gigawatts of new variable and dispatchable capacity because the pipeline of interest is so big. And crucially, project proponents must prove that they can have the project capacity building and feeding in clean energy to our grid by 2030 to be eligible. Now, of course, new energy must be moved around the country. That's a slightly more difficult task for us in Australia than here in Singapore, which is why we're backing it up with $20 billion through our Rewiring the Nation investment scheme to bring more transmission to our grid and make it fit for the 21st century. And as I said, we see ourselves playing a role in helping our friends and neighbours decarbonise where we can as well. We're the 7th biggest continent in the world, or the world's largest island, depending on how you prefer to look at it. We have the world's best renewable resources, the best solar resources in the world, and above average wind. We also have good biomass resources. And our population is relatively small, meaning that we don't call on most of that ourselves. So we recognise that with the right policy settings and collaboration, this can be used to help ourselves and our friends and partners create jobs and investment and decarbonisation. And of course, there are many ways that we can do this, and Sun Cable is one example. There's a long way to go and many hurdles that Sun Cable must yet overcome. But today's announcement is a material step forward. I congratulate the Sun Cable team who are here and the Singaporean and Indonesian governments on the significant work that's gone to getting to this point. And again, I personally thank Sealing for your engagement. Many discussions we've had. Fatty said that you and he are regular texters. Sealing and I are regular interlocutors about Sun Cable. He's always been straightforward to deal with and always very forward-leaning in his willingness to help, which we very much appreciate. So this is an exciting step forward to help us export clean, cheap renewables generated in Australia directly to Southeast Asia. And again, we're doing a lot to move the energy around our own country. Transmission interconnection in this region is challenging and critical to decarbonisation as well. We see it in Australia. We need 5,000 kilometres of new transmission lines between now and 2030 to connect the different generation sources across our 5 eastern states, and another 5,000 again to be built by 2050. But when the sun isn't shining in Tasmania, it will be in Queensland. Or if the wind's not blowing in South Australia, it will be in New South Wales. So this is an opportunity to move that renewable energy around our country. Being able to share cheap, clean renewables generated in geographical regions in Australia is crucial. But similar lessons apply across our region. For example, Vietnam has excellent offshore wind. Laos has significant hydropower. Indonesia has the potential for large-scale geothermal. So that's why we also support Singapore's vision for an ASEAN grid, which has enormous potential for our region. And we're not members of ASEAN, but we are comprehensive strategic partners of ASEAN, and so we can support the ASEAN grid comprehensively and strategically as partners, and that's what we intend to do. And if Sun Cable does proceed through its future hurdles, it'll connect into Singapore, and I see that as Australia then participating in the ASEAN grid as well, indirectly, but will play a role in supporting that vision for ASEAN. And of course, green hydrogen will also play a role. Again, we have a long way to go, but we are well on the way. Our pipeline of green hydrogen investments tops $200 billion and is the largest pipeline in the world. Australian green hydrogen is the largest pipeline in the world of green hydrogen. A quarter of all the world's green hydrogen projects are in Australia, and around 20% of them are already underway. Final investment decision or construction underway. And finally, I mentioned the third pillar, playing an increasingly meaningful role in global supply chains. Future Made in Australia program has been diversifying our clean energy supply chains at its core, adding more value to our critical minerals, and developing more complex industrial structures to make not just renewable energy in Australia, but the things that make renewable energy. We see diversified supply chains as being in everyone's best interest, with every country playing their role. We welcome everyone in our region playing a bigger role. We don't see this as competition, we see this as collaboration. We can all benefit from more diversified supply chains. And we can play a meaningful role in that when it comes to adding to our lithium reserves, our green iron, our solar panel manufacturing, our battery manufacturing, and so much more. So to conclude, it's always good to be back here in Singapore. I was last here on New Year's Eve on holidays with my family. Siling, you probably noticed a small increase in GDP as my teenagers went shopping with my credit card. But back here today on official business with my friends, meaning we can do so much more together. And it's a time when so much is happening. And happening between Australia and Southeast Asia. When we came to office 2.5 years ago, Australian direct investment in Southeast Asia was lower than it had been in 2014. One of the first things the Prime Minister did was ask one of our most eminent bankers, Nicholas Moore, to develop a new Southeast Asia economic strategy. It's a good strategy, and Nicholas continues to work on it when the Prime Minister appointed him as Special Envoy to Southeast Asia. And that strategy highlights everything we're doing, the clean energy economy as the most significant challenge and opportunity for Southeast Asia and Australia. With $4 trillion in green investment expected by 2030, potentially rising to $15 trillion by 2050. It identifies big opportunities for our countries to collaborate on supply chains for solar, electric vehicle, battery storage, and cross-border electricity trading. These are exactly the sorts of projects we'll be looking at with our $2 billion Southeast Asia investment financing facility to support Australian organisations investing in our region, announced earlier this year. And of course, At a national level, our landmark, and I do mean this, the Australia-Singapore Green Economy Agreement is, I think, our most comprehensive agreement in the region. It's put in place an architecture for cross-border trade in electricity and facilitates trade and collaboration and is progressing the green and digital shipping corridor. It's a very important agreement, and Siling and I often compare notes about what more we can do in relation to the Green Economy Agreement and indeed the CSP 2.0, which our Prime Ministers are working on. It's an important agreement, the Green Economy Agreement, one I'm proud of and one that both Siling and I want us to do more and more under. Because decarbonisation, my friends, is too important to be done alone, too challenging to be done in isolation, too big for any country to undertake in isolation. Singapore and Australia are key partners and friends on the journey, and the IEA is an important guide to help us all on the journey. So at this event today, and the new IEA office here in Singapore provides us with that wonderful opportunity to work even more closely together, which I'm committed to doing with all of you, with Singapore, the IEA, and all partners and friends on this journey, and I'm delighted to be here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Bowen. We invite you to remain on stage, sir. It's good to have you back in Singapore as well. We will now witness the award of the conditional approval by EMA to Sun Cable. To join Minister Bowen, we'd like to invite back up on stage Dr. Tan See Leng, Minister for Manpower and Second Minister for Trading Industry, Singapore, Mr. Phua Kok Keong, Chief Executive, Energy Market Authority of Singapore, Mr. Mitesh Patel, Interim CEO and Chief Operating Officer of Sun Cable, Ms. Tan Kuei, Chief Executive Officer, Grok Ventures, and Mr. Eugene To, Assistant Chief Executive, Energy Market Authority of Singapore. We now invite Mr. Phua Kok Keong, Chief Executive of Energy Market Authority of Singapore, to present the letter of conditional approval from EMA to Sun Cable, represented by Mr. Mitesh Patel. Very nice moment indeed. We invite our ministers to step forward as well for a group photograph together in a line. Thank you. Dr. Tan, Minister Bowen, distinguished guests, thank you very much. We invite you to make your way back to your seats. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for me to invite Dr. Andrew Light. He is the Assistant Secretary of Energy for International Affairs, Department of Energy, United States, on stage to deliver this special address. Please welcome him with a round of applause, shall we?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Minister Bowen and Fatih, for your inspiring remarks. A special, grateful thank you, both from myself and from your friend, Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, Minister Tan, not only for your remarks today, but for your leadership and your exceptional team, which I've had the pleasure and good fortune to work with for over 2 years now on opening the IEA Regional Center here in Singapore. I'm so thrilled to see this after, it wasn't a terribly long time, but it still was, it took a while, to witness the launch of this first ever Regional Cooperation Center, which I believe will advance both core missions of the IEA, net zero energy transitions and insurance of energy security in one of the fastest growing and most important energy regions in the world. This is my third tour through the US government in my career. I started this particular job on Inauguration Day with President Biden on January 20th, 2021, and one of the benefits of it is that I get to work with a vast array of incredible institutions around the world. As part of this job, I'm one of the 2 governing board members on the International Energy Agency and one of 3 vice chairs along with colleagues from Japan and France. It was almost 2 years ago this month. We were sitting in an IEA governing board meeting in Paris when the opportunity was first raised to have a regional center here in Singapore, and we heard about the incredibly generous commitment of the Singaporean government in sponsoring this center. The United States immediately put up its hand and enthusiastically began lobbying, as my colleagues know, intensively, other IE members to support this initiative, pledging our own voluntary financial contributions for the initial budget and urging others to do so as well. This was, in fact, the second big commitment that Secretary Granholm and I had made that year to Singapore. We came here just a few months earlier in July 2022, where we committed with Minister Tan to partner with Singapore as part of our Net Zero World program. That program brings together a consortium of hundreds of our laboratory engineers and energy experts from 10 of our 17 national labs to produce mutually agreed upon technical plans and investment pathways for mid-century net zero transitions on particular topics. With Singapore, of course, its focus immediately on regional transmission. And this was because early on in the Biden-Harris administration, Southeast Asia was one of our biggest priorities with respect to energy, appropriately so. Why? You've heard it all before. You heard it from Fatih this morning. Again, the importance of Southeast Asia for the future of climate and energy for the entire world is absolutely unassailable. It cannot be questioned. It's the second fastest growing energy growth market in the world. The first largest, will be the fourth largest energy consumer, and consequently, unless things go right, as Fatih said, the fourth largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. But the opportunity side is also equally unassailable. Few regions of the world, except maybe India, have the potential infrastructure, know-how, manufacturing capacity, and political will to provide the diversification of clean energy supply chains that we desperately need today. Absolutely. But it's not just the stats and the facts that drew us here and got our immediate support for this center in Singapore. It's the humility, frankly, that I feel and my team feels when we work with Minister Tan and his team and everyone else throughout the region. I know a few places in the world where I see such dedicated resolution in taking on the challenges before them. And it's not just dedication, it's joy, it's pleasure in the work that they do, it's hope, it's pragmatic, clear-eyed hope that we can do better. And my friends, that is a preciously scarce commodity for the kind of work we do today. You are all involved in one of the, if not the most important conversation in the world. It is the future of our planet, for good or ill, good or bad. For every step we take, for every project we do, this Sun Cable project is tremendous. Congratulations, Minister Bowen and Minister Tan and everyone who has worked on that. We followed it closely, as you know, and we're tremendously encouraged to see this big step. But we all know that for every step we take, we are struck with climate disasters, some only modeled up until now, and now actually occurring, and tragically we are faced with new threats when it comes to energy security. The work we do is frankly damned hard. So you need partners who get you up in the morning. You need partners who you want to answer the phone calls with. When I see Minister Tan and others in this room, and he knows this because every time I see him, I get a big hug, I feel lighter in my heart. I feel ready to go to work. And that is the kind of partnership that we have, and that is why we thoroughly embraced this center and see the tremendous potential in it. Now, to be transparent, it wasn't always an easy conversation at the IEA Governing Board to get to where we are today. There was a lot of debate over several meetings. And this is not to be critical. There's a good reason for this. We were facing an unfortunate reality. We're all part of too many international institutions, and too many of them, frankly, do not work. And too many of them were launched with tremendous fanfare, not all with lions, like we saw yesterday, dancing lions, but something, right? Some big show, and they don't live up to their promise. And that is a tragedy, given the amount of work that's put into doing something like this. So 1,000 flowers are blooming in the energy world in particular. Every time we turn around, there's a new something or other on hydrogen alone. And too many of them either wither on the vine or have a very, very short shelf life. So why were the conversations hard? Because the IEA works. It does. It works well. It's moving the global discussion on the urgency and benefits of clean energy transitions. It's not broke. Why fix it? Why add an overextension, potentially, of its mission in another country? Why risk the viability of successful international institution exactly at the moment when it is reaching new heights of influence in so many larger governmental fora beyond the current membership of the IEA, whether it's the G7, the G20, the APEC, the UN framework convention, or whatever? What made the difference? Why did we make this step? Two things. First, it's the stark math, the atmospheric physics, and the energy economics. Energy is the largest driver of climate change. The biggest source of energy emissions are not in the current IEA membership. For the IEA to successfully go beyond analyzing the world to enabling change in the world, the IEA needs a global family of consequence. We had, of course, the association program, but we knew it was insufficient to really get where we needed to go. And secondly, what really made the difference was having such a strong partner in Singapore and the particular characteristics for this. Singapore has taken what for many would be a geographical challenge and turned it into an asset. It's taken unique fortunes and looked at a much larger balance sheet than its own. It is becoming a leader on creative market-based approaches, smart energy, innovation solutions, regulations, and on and on and on. But most importantly, it has not just recognized that its future and prosperity is linked to its incredible and vibrant neighbors, but it has forged those links to be stronger than they have to be. And that's unique in this world, when we're being torn apart in so many ways. Singapore could easily sit comfortably on its own decarbonization and renewable energy strategy, content to do its part. Small population, small geographical footprint, small carbon footprint, has modest emissions profile on the world. But no, Singapore chose not to do that, to rightly see its future in the region and this region's future as the key to the energy future of the world. So let me put it one other way. Singapore and the rest of the regional partners are rightly and justifiably protecting their interests, as all countries should, but they're not narrowly pushing their path to the exclusion of others. And that is rare in this world. So I've said it before to my staff, and I will say it again right now publicly, I would be far more confident in the success of the global energy transition we require if more parts of the world had the same commitment to regional cooperation as Southeast Asia does. And Minister, you were called a fixer yesterday. I'm going to take that compliment up a notch. In Yiddish, we would call you a macher, a maker, literally a maker of change. And that is rare, and that is important in the kind of work that we do. I believe that Singapore and Southeast Asia can succeed, but the rest of the region cannot all follow the same path as Singapore. Frankly, I believe the region is poised on a clean energy revolution. Singapore has the resources to make two energy transitions, first to low emissions natural gas, and now to a decarbonized future. It has a pathway to net zero that it could afford. But while Singapore can financially afford a two-step transition, most of the rest of the countries in this region, most of the rest of the developing countries in the world cannot, for us to achieve our global clean energy transition and achieve our climate stabilization goals. That is why we partnered with Singapore on our Net Zero World program, because we're committed to helping other countries to region to make one clean energy transition, to not risk locking in antiquated infrastructure for generations at a staggering cost. One energy transition, leapfrogging directly to a clean energy future with greater regional self-sufficiency, offering true energy security, the truest energy security that comes, which is clean energy independence. And in doing so, by becoming a leader on clean energy deployment, diversifying the global supply chain and making them more secure. But, and this is important, and this is where I'm going to start closing, all of us, public sector, private sector, need to be as generous to this region as Singapore is in supporting this new regional center. And that means not impressing our view on what success must look like, not necessarily pressing on them our old energy solutions, as opposed to a clean energy future. Now, don't get me wrong, I love events like this. SIEW, they give me hope too. On display is the best innovation the private sector has to offer, much of it now government-enabled. which is the most powerful combination you can have. Free and fair and open markets should reward these efforts and should raise to the level of success those that have the best solutions. But let's take a note on that. And I say this as a representative of an energy export superpower. Just as Southeast Asia is not pushing their energy future on us, we should not be perpetuating old energy economics on them. This is not the kind of energy partnership that points to the brightest future, the creation of as many good-paying jobs as you can create, and the most sustainable prosperity. I think the need is very clear in that respect. The opportunity is here. It's up to us to make it happen. And so on the occasion of this Singapore IEA Ministerial Forum, please, let's all celebrate the beginning of this exciting new phase for both the region and the IEA, and I think for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Light. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Light, for your conviction in Southeast Asia and in Singapore. Thank you kindly. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Tim Gold, Chief Energy Economist of the International Energy Agency. He'll be joining us on stage to present his thoughts on the launch of IEA Southeast Asia Energy Outlook. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gold.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a huge pleasure to join you today to give you some findings from the new IEA Outlook for Southeast Asia, which we launched this morning. It's the 6th time we've done this analysis, the Outlook for Southeast Asia, which means that we've done more work on the Outlook for Southeast Asia than for any of the other part of the world. And of course, it's a very diverse region, each country choosing its own pathway. But I'm going to present to you some of the trends at regional level that we see and that we've talked about in detail in this new outlook. And if you're looking for one image that expresses why Southeast Asia, why this new regional cooperation center is so important, then this is the one. Dr. Birol, our executive director, has mentioned this already. So second only to India in the contribution to global energy demand growth over the coming years. That's a very vivid representation of why this gathering and why the new regional center is so important. And what's behind that number? Southeast Asia's growth story that others have mentioned already is central to our engagement with this region, and it's also central to the outlook that we're presenting. Take population. Between now and 2050, Southeast Asia adds the equivalent of Singapore's population to its urban population every year. 1 Singapore every year. Take transport. 6,000 cars added each day to the region's stock of cars. You see also many, many two-wheelers around, 4 times the global average for two-wheelers, a very important part of the transport mix here. Appliances. In our work, we look in detail at the importance of cooling. 5-time rise in air conditioner ownership by 2035, a 12-time rise in air conditioner ownership by 2050. And there's also an industrial and manufacturing story, which has many aspects given Southeast Asia's integration in global value chains. But one of the very important ones is just been mentioned now, is the role that this region can play in the diversification and resilience of clean energy supply chains. Now, how does this look for the region's energy mix? So since 2010, around 80% of the rise in Southeast Asia's energy demand has been met by fossil fuels, in fact, mainly in that sense by coal. But the future does not look like the past, not least because 8 out of the 10 countries in ASEAN now have net zero emissions goals. And there are some encouraging developments, many of which we've heard about from the region's policymakers here at SIEW. So the ambition is clear, but where do the policies in place get us? So we conducted some detailed analysis of today's policy settings and plans across the region. And clean energy is set to grow significantly faster over the coming years than it has in the past. And it meets more than 1/3 of demand growth to 2035. And that's significantly more than the amount that we found last time we did this analysis. Higher renewables, more efficiency investments, greater progress also with electrification. Some of the numbers that we're seeing, for instance, on electric car sales, 15% of car sales in Vietnam last year were electric, 10% in Thailand. Things are moving. But 1/3 met by clean energy also means that 2/3 is met by traditional fuels, all of which continue to grow under that scenario based on today's policy settings. And much of that additional oil and gas that you're looking at on the screen is imported. Southeast Asia turns into a major market for the world's exporters, including for LNG in this scenario. We also looked at a scenario in which countries in the region get fully on track for their long-term energy and climate goals, including the net zero targets that I just spoke about, with enhanced international support. So you meet the same demand for energy services, but you do it in a different way. You move much more quickly towards a more electrified, renewable-rich system. And that rapid scale-up in clean energy included accelerated improvements in efficiency, has broad implications for the energy mix, as you can see on the screen. Let's have a look in more detail at the power sector. Electricity use in this part of the world is growing very fast and continues to grow fast, so more than 2,000 terawatt hours by 2030. And how much is that? Well, a useful benchmark. 1,000 terawatt hours is the amount that Japan consumes in a year. So that's 2 Japans within a few years for Southeast Asia. And how will all of this demand for cooling, for appliances, for light industrial uses be met? As things stand, there is an uptick in a range of clean energy sources of generation, led by Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, alongside existing powerhouses of clean electricity like Lao PDR. But again, that is not sufficient to cover all the growth in electricity demand. So you see growth too in coal and natural gas. The region is on track to achieve a doubling in renewable capacity by 2030. But as we're all aware, as agreed at COP28, the world as a whole is aiming for a tripling. Again, there's much more that could be done. How much more? So in a scenario that achieves the region's climate goals, you get a much more rapid transformation of the power mix, led by solar and wind, but with many other technologies playing a part. We're very aware of Southeast Asia's richness in bioenergy, in geothermal, in a range of other technologies. Hydropower is already a major part of the regional energy mix. And that scale-up is accompanied by efforts to scale down the utilization and emissions of coal-fired plants in particular, by using them less, using them more for balancing than for baseload, by loosening some of the restrictive PPAs that are in place, by co-firing in some instances with low emissions fuels like ammonia, and by using innovative financing strategies to manage that phase down of plants that are young. The average age of a coal plant in South Asia is 15 years. So under normal circumstances, those coal plants would have many, many more years of operation. And it's also vital to integrate those sources of new clean power efficiently. There is enough flexibility in today's energy system across much of Southeast Asia to accommodate higher shares of wind and solar. Gas is obviously particularly good for that. But as variable generation continues to grow, then new types of flexibility will be needed. Here's the example of Indonesia. Short-term flexibility comes not only from thermal plants when we look ahead to 2050, but from a range of sources, including batteries, demand response, and varying the use of electrolyzers that are for hydrogen production. And of course, as many speakers have emphasized, and I want to underline that again here, grids, including well regionally integrated power networks and storage. Energy security and affordability are understandably high priorities for Southeast Asia, especially for consumers that have been hit hard by high prices and volatility for oil and gas in recent years. And this slide shows how if you accelerate that clean energy transition, if you put more money into clean energy projects, it doesn't just help you with air quality, it doesn't just give you a place in the new clean energy economy, it also helps you tackle many pressing energy security vulnerabilities. So today's policy settings are enough to generate a significant rise in clean energy investment, but as you can see on the right, they are not enough to present Southeast Asia's annual oil and gas import bill rising to well over $200 billion each year as imported volumes rise. That is a significant financial and fiscal burden. If you're able to scale up that clean energy investment, the benefits go well beyond emissions. It also delivers a major reduction in those import bills and those energy security vulnerabilities. And what about emissions? Southeast Asia is unusual in global terms at the moment because emissions are rising shoulder to shoulder with GDP. Those two trends have parted company in many other countries and regions. The pathway that Southeast Asia is on manages to loosen that link between GDP, which continues to grow, and emissions. But an increase of 1/3 in emissions to 2050 still brings considerable hazards, both locally and at global scale. So the task at hand is to bend that emissions curve down even further. And it won't surprise you to see what the main ways are to achieve this. A much stronger push on renewables, efficiency improvements, electrification, and clean fuels, including carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So a key work from an IEA perspective is to make those opportunities to bring in the private sector, bring in different sources of finance for the projects that can achieve the sorts of outcomes that you're looking at on the screen. And that brings me to my very final point, and to a thread that runs throughout the whole report, and indeed throughout the whole of IEA's engagement with Southeast Asia, that importance of collaboration, cooperation, both at regional and international levels. There are many aspects to this. One that's been highlighted rightly here today is the importance of cross-border electricity trade, and that is going to be a high priority, or continues to be a high priority for the IEA going forward. We look forward very much from a Paris IEA perspective to working with Sue-Eun and the team in the new Singapore office. These are exciting times for the IEA, but we need to make them very exciting times also for Southeast Asia's clean energy transition. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed with the IEA forum, it is now time for me to invite our members of the media to take your leave. It is now time for you to take your leave. Members of the media, thank you very much. We'll now proceed with the first session of the IEA forum on unlocking Southeast Asia's decarbonization potential. This session is presented by JERA. Our keynote speaker for this session is His Excellency Phu Vong Luangsesana, Vice Minister of Natural Resources and Environment, Lao PDR. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Our Excellency on stage, please.
Thank you for the introduction. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment of the Lao PDR, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the Government of Singapore and the Energy Market Authority for inviting us to join this important forum. It is an honor to be here today to discuss the crucial issue of unlocking Southeast Asia decarbonization potential and bridging the financing gap to support clean energy transition. As we gather here today, climate change is no longer a distant threat, but a pressing reality. The impacts are being felt across Southeast Asia, from extreme weather events to rising temperatures, which are already affecting the livelihoods of our people. The future of our region's prosperity depends on our ability to move to a low-carbon economy. Unlocking Southeast Asia's decarbonization potential is not only an environmental necessity, but also an opportunity for economic growth, energy security, and regional cooperation. Lao PDR is committed to playing a pivotal role in this transition. Lao PDR, like many of our neighbors, is at the heart of Southeast Asia energy journey. Our country's abundant natural resources, particularly hydropower, position us as a key player in the regional energy market. However, we are also acutely aware of the critical challenges posed by climate change and the urgent need for sustainable low-carbon energy solutions. Lao PDR has long been an emerging energy producer in Southeast Asia. Our hydropower infrastructure, comprising 81 operational plants, serves as the backbone of our energy production. These projects allow us not only to meet domestic energy demands, but also to supply clean, renewable energy to our neighbors, positioning Lao PDR as a leader in regional power generation. Beyond hydropower, Lao PDR is committed to diversifying our energy portfolio. Our renewable energy ambitions extend to increasing the share of solar, wind, biomass, and biogas in our energy mix to 30% by 2030. This diversification is crucial to meeting both national and regional energy needs while ensuring environmental sustainability. Furthermore, we are working to promote green energy in the transport sector, aiming for 30% electric vehicle penetration by 2030, aligning with global efforts to reduce emissions. Lao PDR is not immune to the devastating effects of climate change. Rising temperatures, changing precipitation patterns, and the increasing frequency of extreme weather events are already affecting our communities and ecosystems. The impacts on our agriculture, water resources, and overall well-being are deeply concerning. As a result, we have developed several national policies to address these challenges, including our national climate change strategy and the ongoing implementation of our second NDC. Our commitment to achieving net zero emission by 2050 remains strong. We have already initiated the preparation of our long-term emission development strategy and our national adaptation plan to enhance resilience, particularly in rural areas where the impacts of climate change are most pronounced. In addition to that, recently signed memorandums of understanding for collaboration under the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement between the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment of Lao PDR and the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Singapore, focuses on carbon credit and facilitating knowledge transfer and joint projects in this area to promote sustainable development and environmental conservation through collaboration. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, financing is critical enabler for the clean energy transition in emerging and developing economies, including LAOPDR. The cost of capital for renewable energy projects in these economies, particularly for solar PV and storage solutions, is often more than double that in advanced economies. According to the IEA, lowering the cost of capital by just 1 percentage point could reduce financial costs for net zero emissions by 20% annually. The government of LAOPDR estimates that US $4.7 billion is required to meet our conditional NDC targets. This underscores the need for innovative financing mechanisms, international cooperation, and public-private partnerships to bridge the gap. In 2024 alone, it is estimated that emerging economies require US $320 billion in clean energy investments. We look forward to further collaboration with regional and international partners to accelerate our energy transition efforts. In conclusion, LAOPDR stands ready to contribute to Southeast Asia's journey towards a sustainable and connected energy future. Our commitment to expanding renewable energy, enhancing regional energy security, and addressing the impacts of climate change remains unwavering. However, we cannot do it alone. We invite all stakeholders, governments, multilateral institutions, and the private sector to join us in this journey. Together, we can unlock Southeast Asia's decarbonization potential and build a low-carbon resilient future for all. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, His Excellency. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will just prepare the stage for our first panel discussion. A gentle reminder to come onto the website at www.siew.gov.sg, where you'll see the program for the entire week, and also the fact that when you move on after this, the showcase on the outset is nice and ready for you as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to mention who the panelists are as we get the stage prepared. Leading the conversation, moderating this session, is Ms. Ursula Borak. She is the Deputy Director General of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. With her are Dr. Anders Hoffmann, IEA Governing Board Chair, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry for Climate, Energy and Utilities at Denmark. His Excellency Sompop Patanariyankul, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy, Thailand. Masanori Surada, Deputy Commissioner for International Affairs, Agency for Natural Resources and Energy at METI, Japan. Izumi Kai, Chief Executive Officer, JERA, Asia. And completing the entire panel, ladies and gentlemen, is Meg O'Neill, CEO at Woodside Energy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we leave you to enjoy this panel discussion as I now invite our panelists to make their way up on stage, please. Ms. Borak, I'll leave you to lead the session. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Excellencies, Ambassadors, dear ladies and gentlemen. tackling one of the world's biggest challenges is the global climate change. Only with comprehensive and accelerated energy transitions, global commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, in particular CO2 emissions, to promote clean technologies, to improve energy efficiency, to develop hydrogen markets. That means effective strategies to achieve a net zero environment and carbon neutrality. We will be in a position to keep 1.5 degrees in reach. So decarbonization is the key word, the key strategy in this context, and the Southeast Asia region is a crucial region in the world due to its increasing energy demand and consumption, and therefore also increasing CO2 emissions. But there's also the other side of the coin. New markets will come up which bring new business cases and therefore economic opportunities and benefits for the region. So this session will therefore discuss the outlook for Southeast Asia's energy transformation and opportunities and challenges for the region's decarbonization and the role of the IEA Regional Cooperation Center in supporting clean energy transitions. So let's start with our panel. I have first you, Dr. Sompop, Your Excellency. Thank you for being here with us. You are the only representative from Southeast Asian government, so my first question will be for you. Thailand has presented carbon neutrality and net zero targets as part of its climate pledge. You have also been working on a new national energy plan, which will change the direction of the energy sector. Could you please share your thoughts about the priorities Thailand and Southeast Asia should focus on to fulfill these objectives, and what are the most important challenges you are facing in this endeavor?
Thank you. So first of all, Excellency, Ambassador, and distinguished guests. So I think as the government, we have set the national energy plan to have the energy development in line with the climate target, and also for the role of the government. We need to also think about the affordability and security of the energy sector, which is very important as well, in order to have that kind of policy to be sustainably implemented. So the challenge is that in order to develop to the new energy transition, we need technology to unlock the potential, not only in Thailand, but in Southeast Asia, that we have a lot of resources that to unlock using the new technology, hydrogen, CCUS, and other clean technology. First of all, technology needs to be feasible and affordable. So this thing need everyone to work together, because not only Thailand, not only a particular country that can develop that kind of technology that we need for the whole energy transition. The second thing is to break the market barrier. The first one is the risk. You know that in order to have the new kind of clean energy project, the first thing is to finance. So we have to break the barrier on the risk perception of the energy developer and the financial sector in order to have the project to be feasible. So I think the role of the government to facilitate. For example, in Thailand, we have the problem of chicken and egg in EV development. So we have the developer to build a charging station, but they are afraid that there will be no EV to charge. So we'll set the incentive for EV, and we have successfully promote the use of EV in Thailand, and also that is a first thing that I have observed over the years. And also another thing that I would like to underline the importance of connectivity. not only in terms of renewable energy resource, but also in terms of knowledge, expertise, and also capacity building. I think that the IEA Coordination Center could help on this. I mean, in terms of connecting the technological expertise and also knowledge and policy coordination. Yeah, this is the thing that I think that we need for clean energy transition in Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And now I turn to Anders Hoffmann. Anders, we have heard from Dr. Sompop very strong insights to the challenges facing Southeast Asia, and you as chair of the IEA Governing Board, could you please share with us your thoughts about how the new regional IEA center can support this objective? And it would also be great if you could quickly explain what is this new center and why it can be instrumental in support of the region.
Yes, I will be but happy to try to do that. But first of all, I mean, just let me thank the government of Singapore that we actually now have the center. I think Andrew said it very nicely in his presentation, so I'm not going to repeat all the nice words he said, but I completely agree with that. I think this is an extremely important step for us in the IEA to develop that and have that center. And I think on top of what Andrew said, I think in my mind, the center is like an additional floor at the IEA. So what you will be getting in Singapore is all of the data, all of the capability of the normal IEA. So we are not inventing a completely new way of working, a completely new approach. You also heard Fatih Birol this morning said that he had to sort of make sure that the spirit was the same, the culture was the same. So it's a very, very strong analytical support that would now be deployed in this region. The good thing about the center is that it's also in the region. So you have all the benefits of actually having boots on the ground that can sort of make sure that the analyses are more fitted to be in the region. So I think that's just to sort of frame it. I mean, I think for me, the most important starting point for the analysis would probably be the sort of the energy trilemma, that you had sort of a clean, affordable, and secure transition. And I think in Denmark, we have been working with them, I don't know, for at least 20 years. And I think the good thing about this transition, or sort of this trilemma, is you can, regardless of what minister you have, you can use that. You just have to sort of change what word you put first. So sometimes it's secure, sometimes it's affordable, but it works. So basically, I think this approach is also very important in Southeast Asia, simply because, as we just saw in Tim's presentation, you had this huge increase in energy demand. You had the youngest fleet of coal power plants. So I mean, there's a need to shift there. You also have very, very high money spent on fossil fuels, imported fossil fuels, so you need to have something going there. So I think it really boils down to sort of three main areas. First, I think this center could really expand some of the great works that are already going on in the IEA on the energy efficiency side. I mean, all the sort of energy standards would be extremely important to develop more. Solar and wind, we can also see that in Tim's graph. How to expand that? What would be the policy framework to do that? And I think in that way, the interconnectors sort of fit very nicely on top of that. It was mentioned in the Australian minister's address, this idea that the sun doesn't shine at the same time all those places. The wind blows different places. You also have different time zones. So expanding the interconnectors would hugely benefit and increase the value of renewable energy and thereby make it more affordable. But also make it more secure, simply because then you can have electricity from your neighbors if the wind isn't blowing in your part of the region. Then finally, I think what I would mention in the end is what's also mentioned before, the CCS potential, given that you have all the storage possibility in the region. Moving forward in that, I think what the center could do there is, it's actually quite difficult to work in the policy space of carbon capture and storage, simply because of the value chain complexities. So really trying to help countries understand when will we make this ready at what time. So all of the chicken and egg, you will not develop the storage capacity before you have capture, but you will not capture before you have storage. So really trying to come with policy insights, given that it has to be regional developed. I think that would be another key component of the center. So I think I'll stop with that, but let me just reiterate, very important that we have it now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anders. And now I would like to turn to Mr. Masanori Tsuruda-san. Japan, and in particular METI, is a major player in the region and one of the drivers behind another initiative supporting Southeast Asia's energy transition, namely the Asia Zero Emission Community, the ASEC. Could you please introduce those initiatives and how they support energy transition in Southeast Asia?
Well, thank you very much for raising that point. And Japan is actively working with other Asian countries to promote that initiative, Asia Zero Emission Communities, or ASEC. And this is a new one kicked off last year by 11 partner countries to address energy and climate issues. And the ASEC partner countries have been working based on the two basic principles. One is triple breakthroughs. Triple breakthrough is an idea to simultaneously achieve zero emissions and economic growth and economic securities. And the other is more important, one goal, various pathways. One goal is decarbonization. Of course, this is a very important goal for everybody as a shared agendas. But we think that we have to understand the difference of the region. The situation in Asia is quite different from others. Well, according to the very interesting report from IEAs and the electricity demand, power demand in Asia, Southeast Asia is 1 Japan, 2 Japan, or 3 Japans. This is a big growth. And so we have to think about the difference depending on the region. So we have to think about conscious and realistic and a practical energy transition depending on the circumstances of each country. So this idea is very important. By the way, we have been enjoying the strong involvement of the private sector to lead these initiatives under the strong collaboration between the public and private partnerships. And we are doing more than 350 projects up until now. And the most distinctive, I'd like to emphasize that the recent development about ASEC is that we had just 2 weeks ago, we had a second leaders meetings in Vientiane, Laos. And at that meeting, and we've adapted very important document, Action Plan for Next Decade, Action Plan for Next Decade. The point of that action plan is that, yes, we have been discussing about the implementation of the individual project, as I told you, 350 projects or something like that. But we've emphasized in that paper that we need to go to another stage, that is the rule-making, policy coordination among partners, including, for example, the visualization of the greenhouse gas emissions throughout the supply chains. I know that this is a very, very challenging issue to coordinate that, and there is a big responses depending on the countries, but leaders, ASEC leaders are now committed. I think this is a commitment for ASEC partner countries to survive in the very difficult, great competition age under the name of decarbonization. And I think that ASEC now is going to new phases, as I told you. And so I hope that I'd like to share this information, the various occasions, including this kind of occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to you. And now I would like to turn our attention to our private sector representatives. We are really having the private sector here because that will be also instrumental through investments, projects, and innovation. And thus we are really happy to have two eminent energy companies among us to discuss the private sector perspective. I would like to start with you, Mr. Izumi Kaisan. I would like to ask you how JERA, your company, sees and anticipates the changes that are to come in the region to combine sustainable growth and compliance with climate objectives, and how does your company prepare for this change?
So thank you very much for this opportunity. In Southeast Asia, we are witnessing rapid energy demand growth in the range of about 5 to 6% in many countries. So if this trend continues, over the next 5 years, energy demand will increase by approximately 30% or so. So they're requiring lots of investment for new capacity and also transmission just to keep up. And at the same time, many countries are trying to navigate the energy trilemma challenges for energy security and also affordable supply, as well as the sustainable efforts. So it is not so easy, but from JERA's perspective, we have key 3 pillars to contribute to these regions. So one is contribute to expanding renewables, and also second is low carbon fuels, which includes hydrogen and ammonia. And the third is LNG, with an aim of reducing emissions gradually to be able to achieve net zero by 2050. So situation in each Asian country is different. So different level of decarbonization approaches. Some countries values affordability, and there might be some risk of returning back to coal in some country because of scarcity in renewables resources, or scarcity in gas turbines, or the insufficient transmission line, etc. So Singapore's renewable import, the plant, that is a quite good example to solve such issues across countries. So again, the JERA's focus will be on renewables, low carbon fuels, and LNG. And I just want to share with you one recent success in Japan, which could be introduced into Asia. So which was 20% ammonia introduction to replace, to substitute for coal. So that means reduce the coal combustion volume by 20% and introduced clean ammonia, which does not emit CO2 when combusted. It is still economically challenging, but our intention is to expand this co-firing ratio, substitution ratio from 20% to 50% and ultimately 100%, so that even we continue to utilize the thermal power generation we call just as of now, we can convert it into zero emission thermal power generation. So in Asian countries, of course, we should focus on renewables development as much as possible. But as you understand, there are a couple of technical challenges, not only transmission, but also the need for the development of long duration battery storage, and also potentially supply chain issues because of the scarcity in the material due to the significant needs of expanding solar, wind, as well as hydro and geothermal. So therefore, combination of all of these are very important, and JERA is very much committed to contribute to this region by focusing on the 3 regions with an aim of lowering emissions gradually to be able to achieve net zero by 2050.
Thank you very much. Mrs. O'Neill, following up on the input from Mr. Izumi Kaisan, do you think the private sector's vision is sufficiently considered into the planning of the energy transition? What would be, from your perspective, welcome addition to the planning process currently ongoing in the region to support the efforts that will be required from energy players in the region and to attract the much needed investments that will be needed along the regional energy value chain?
Well, thanks for the question, Ursula, and thanks to the IEA for inviting me to participate in this panel. It's a real pleasure to be here. So Woodside's strategy is to thrive through the energy transition, and part of that is a recognition that the pace at which the energy transition progresses is going to be quite different in every individual country. The path for Singapore, the path for Lao PDR, the path for Thailand will all be quite unique to the economic development, the natural resources that are located in each nation. So we spend quite a bit of time with the governments in the countries where we operate, places like Australia and the US, as well as countries where we sell our product, places like Japan, Korea, China, to understand the objectives of those governments and to share our thoughts on what we can bring to the table as those nations think about balancing energy security, energy affordability, and decarbonization. With those dialogues, we've developed a strategy that focuses on a couple of pillars, LNG and clean fuels or low carbon fuels. And I think it's worth reminding the audience that natural gas still will have a very important role to play in an energy transition and in a decarbonizing world. And we saw some graphs today from the IEA showing the growth of coal use in this region for power generation. If you step back and look on a total global basis, the world's LNG market today is equal to only 12% or 1/8 of global coal use. So again, in my mind, it's important for us to pursue progress rather than try to leap to perfection overnight, and LNG displacing coal for power gen is an important part of that solution. The second focus for Woodside's strategy is in new energy or low carbon fuels, so things like ammonia and hydrogen. And earlier this year, we completed the acquisition of a clean ammonia plant in Texas, so that benefits from the US government's support for carbon capture and sequestration. Again, noting the points that Kai-san made around the cost pressures associated with ammonia, we need to be doing everything we can as a private sector investor to try to ensure the ammonia we bring to the market is cost competitive. And that's what we believe we have with our US project. But I'll also note that we're working on even further advanced technologies, things like liquid hydrogen, and was pleased that Woodside and Keppel announced yesterday that we've signed a term sheet for providing liquid hydrogen to Singapore to help in Singapore's decarbonization journey. And now liquid hydrogen is a little bit more challenging to handle. It's a small molecule. It's colder than LNG. But we feel like we've got the capabilities in our company and with our value chain partners to be able to advance that. So if all goes according to plan, we look forward to be providing liquid hydrogen here into Singapore potentially as early as 2030.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now I would like to ask you all the same question, because I think it's sometimes good to focus only on a really simple and direct question and have only an answer in a sentence or in 2 sentences. So my question would be, and I would start again with you, Dr. Sompop, what would you request the IEA to focus on in priority for its support in Southeast Asia through its regional center and beyond?
If it's about the energy issue, I would like to encourage the emphasis on energy efficiency. I think it is the thing that in every country we can do that with the maybe minimum cost. I think it's the first thing to be implemented. I think it's not difficult, but it's not easy to do. Yeah, I think energy efficiency is my priority. Yeah.
Energy efficiency as first fuel, then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Now I turn to Anders Hoffmann. What would you think?
I think I could also have picked that one. I think it's a very good place to start. I think another very important part, which was also mentioned earlier, that one of the things that I think the IEA has been doing extremely well has been to train policy developer and around the world, and especially focusing on this region. I think you see quite a lot of political will to actually deliver on the climate goals. And sometimes it's simply the technical need that all of us need to learn from each other. So this is about, how do we share knowledge of what is actually practical? If we take energy efficiency, which energy standards could be implemented with the benefit? So all of these more sort of practical parts, I think that the center can really play a crucial role in sort of making sure that knowledge is widely spread among policy people in the region. So I think sort of energy efficiency, and then just, how do we actually do that? Because the problem with energy efficiency, it's so much you can do, from standards, from air condition to system integration. So I think that would be it. Then secondly, if I could pick another one, I really think this idea about how to integrate the energy markets and the benefits from that is also quite crucial.
Yes, thank you very much. And Mr. Masanori Tsuruda-san, what would be your reply?
Yep, especially I have a strong expectation to IEA regional office in Singapore. and especially going to 2 points. And one is a strong collaboration between the regional office and other entities located in Asia. For example, Japan has been supporting the so-called area, the Economic Research Institute in Asia and the ASEAN, and I think there could be a possible collaboration work between the two organizations, including research in the study work, such as the transition finance and the carbon pricing and the carbon market, or critical minerals, and probably energy security issues, like a diversification of the power sources, or renewable energy, etc., and or cross-border power supply or something like that. And second point is that I think IEAs and its regional office can be a bypass to send the information or to make the world understand what's happening in these regions. Like we've been discussing, there is a big reality that we have to understand. For example, like coal-fired and gas-fired. Let's look at, for example, coal-fired. The countries and regions that have been, they're depending on that, area for so long time. And but you cannot finish, you cannot end the newly established coal-fired, for example. Like human beings, for example, if you are like 80 years old or something like that, you can say you can retire. But if you are like 20 or 25 years old, you cannot make him retired. So that kind of differences. And so I think that the information gained through those regional office can be disseminated to the IEA communities, and that is my expectation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I turn again to the private sector. So Mr. Izumi Kai-san, what would be your answer?
So I think in managing energy trilemma in these Asian regions, where situation in each country is different, is deeper interconnectivity is more important, whether it's electron, molecules, investment, collaboration, partnerships, etc. So I really want IEA to coordinate, try to understand the different situation, and suggest better policy, etc. But one key point I really want to expect is technological development. So over the next 10 to 20 years, I think many more new technology will be coming up. And I think, ideally speaking, incentivizing capturing CO2. So if such kind of technology can be developed, for example, converting captured CO2 into more valuable material, etc., so that's a game changer. So I think interconnectivity within the Asian region is very important, but even across the continent, or European countries develop more new technologies, could be introduced in Asia or vice versa. So that kind of law, I really want to expect IEA.
Thank you very much. Now, Mrs. O'Neill, what would be your reply?
I think having an IEA center in Singapore is a great start. I worry that we're talking simplistically about Southeast Asia as if it's one thing. And the reality is it is many different countries, each of whom have different starting points, different natural resources, different economies, different goals for advancing their societies and their economies. So I would be encouraging the folks at the center to spend time getting to understand the differences in the region. Only through understanding the differences in starting point can you support the nations in the region thinking about how can they work together towards a common goal. So I think there's great potential when you, again, look at across the region at the potential that exists here to harmonize potential sources of energy with demand centers for energy, but it's got to be done in the context of understanding where each individual nation is coming from, and that's, I think, the opportunity that the center here in Singapore brings to the table.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I look to Sue and Tan. So you see, you will have a big agenda, a lot of work. So and of course it will be looked at by the IEA members, but also of course by all the countries in the region, as you just said. Well, we have different pathways, we have different countries, so we really have also different agendas to follow. And I think it's also necessary then to speak to each other and to have some sort of alignment between the different pathways for energy transition. So I thank you all indeed. That was very lively. So I all ask you for a warm applause to the panelists. Thank you.
And thank you, Ursula, for managing this as well. Thank you very much. Panelists, thank you very much. We invite you to make your way to your seats. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the next panel discussion, this would be on bridging the financing gap to support clean energy transition. This session is presented by OCBC. Now, I'm just going to take a moment as well to mention that we have SIEW Connect, the networking reception that happens this evening, ladies and gentlemen. That's from 6 p.m. onwards. Again, we'd like to ensure that you make your way there. It's at Milos, at Shops, at Marina Bay Sands. Put that on your calendar from 6 p.m. for you to be at our networking reception called SIEW Connects. I'll take now a chance to introduce you to the panel that's coming up on stage. This is led by Mr. Timothy Hisset. He will be moderating this session. He is the head of the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, Thailand. With him is His Excellency Saba Lantos, Ministry of Energy, Hungary. His Excellency Frank de Rosier, Assistant Deputy Minister, Canada. Jillian Tan, Assistant Managing Director, Development and International, Chief Sustainability Officer, Monetary Authority of Singapore. Elaine Lam, Head of Global Corporate Banking at OCBC. Yuki Yasui, Managing Director, Asia Pacific Network, GFANZ. And finally, Dr. Wong Tae Chung, Head of the International Affairs Center, Korea Energy Economics Institute. Timothy, I leave you to handle this panel. Ladies and gentlemen, do enjoy this session.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's really good. Another spectacular SIEW being put on by the Singapore EMA, and it's really great to be here. We've got a relatively short session, so I'm going to start off. There's no introductions. I'll start off with you, Saba. Perhaps we can start by setting the scene in Europe. Hungary is currently holding the presidency of the Council of the European Union. What are the key issues Hungary has put on the European agenda to foster the green transition?
Listening to this morning session, I have to realize that Europe has challenged with much other challenges than in Southeast Asia. But however, we are still have after this energy crisis that occurred in Europe, we have many new challenges. So we, as a honest broker of a president of currently to the EU, we are following the same path that the previous presidency already outlined. First of all, the biggest issue for Europe is how could save the competitiveness of Europe in general terms. Among other factors, the energy is one of the key issues. First and for utmost, this is the energy security. Europe, the European Union, is really dependent from other countries for third countries, more than 60%, 62% practically. So after this pandemic and these two terrible wars, we have to realize that the energy security is again a very important and key element for Europe. And what means that if we want to fulfill all promise to the globe, this is mean practically the Fit for 55, meaning that till 2030 we will reduce our global greenhouse gas emission at least 55% compared to the 1990 position, which is a very promising target. And we are on the path, but if we want to reach that level, we have to follow several policies. One, that from fossil fuel we have to turn into more electricity. So electrification is the Miguel, how we can reach to use more electricity instead of fossil fuel is to get, first of all, more power capacity in Europe, more power capacity where we can produce the electricity from our resources, which means, first of all, and at most, renewables. Renewables, it means weather-dependent renewables, basically photovoltaic and wind power, and non-weather dependent, meaning geothermal, biogas, biomethane, that kind of sources, and nuclear. In nuclear, Europe is divided in two parts, but there are some countries who still against to use nuclear reactors. Germany shut down 1 year ago the last nuclear reactor, but there are a changing of the mindset, and a new spring is arrived to the nuclear reactors. So in Europe, more and more countries already decided to build up new nuclear power station, and one of the countries amongst the already committed is Hungary. And we outlined as one of the topic what is really Hungary has decided, this is the geothermal. So in Europe we are not using very heavily the geothermal. Iceland is the main differentiator, but we want to follow thanks to the Hungarian geographical position. We believe and we strongly committed to utilize this geothermal. This is a renewable and not weather-dependent solution. But the main driving force is the weather-dependent. Weather-dependent, it's mainly in the Baltic Sea, in the northern part of Europe, means wind. So there are tremendous wind capacities installed and still is being enforced. And in the southern part of Europe, it's mainly photovoltaic. For instance, Hungary has exceeded, it's a relatively small country, 10 million inhabitants country, so we exceed this year the 7.2 gigawatt photovoltaic capacity, which is a huge development. But this is overall, this is the big phenomenon of Europe growing the photovoltaic capacity. But this is one hand to produce more electricity. The second issue, how can we deliver to the final consumers? And this is how and why we have to develop furthermore the electricity grid, the network. And this is the major issue actually. We have to spend yearly 1.5–2% of the GDP to the electricity grid facility development. And what is a new challenge for all of us using this very intensively, these weather-dependent renewables, how we can store. Because if we have a surplus in a certain phase of a day, for instance, when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing, there is a potential surplus. We have to somehow store it. And actually, there are two industrially wise usable solutions for that. Is a gravity type of, meaning in Europe, hydro pump storage system. And the other hand, the chemical solution, so many practically batteries. So actually, the last decade main headline was photovoltaic and wind power generation capacity. The next decade, how we feel it's the batteries time.
Thank you. Turning to you, Frank, why is Canada at the SIEW this year?
Good question. Well, the first answer, the obvious one, is Canada is a country of the Pacific. So we belong and are active in the region, we already have a significant amount of two-way trade, over $40 billion with ASEAN countries alone, and significant stock of investments. So that's our starting point. But our government has laid out the recently announced Indo-Pacific strategy with the ambition to really rise in terms of prominence in the region. So the Prime Minister was here 2 weeks ago to engage and announce the opening of new diplomatic missions, including in Cambodia and Laos. And a lot of trade missions, efforts, presence by ministers, senior officials. So this is very much in keeping with this commitment. And if you unpack what is currently happening and what the potential is, energy clearly stands out, where over half of Canada's export in the Indo-Pacific region is comprised of energy and natural resources. So we see considerable amount of upside there.
Okay. Very good. Gillian, turning to you, how would you, we've heard the European, sorry,
Tim.
Gillian, sorry, I was facing the wrong way. Sorry, Gillian.
It's all right.
Just hearing the experience from elsewhere in the world, how would you contextualize Asia's specific challenges and the opportunities compared to other regions?
No, thanks so much. I think if there's one takeaway from this morning's excellent discussion, it's that Asia's energy transition journey will be vastly different from the energy transition journey of any other region. And I won't go into all the statistics that I think were very well covered this morning, but the reality is 80% of our energy mix is still in fossil fuels, right? And at the same time, the energy demand that we have is just going to grow, and you heard the statistics this morning. So we're in a classic, if I can say, catch-22 situation. Huge ground to cover in that transition journey, but also massive energy needs. And you can't stop a region from wanting to grow and develop for their people. So the only way we achieve both outcomes, I think, is we really need to leapfrog our traditional fossil fuel dependency and invest heavily in renewables. Now, I'm being Captain Obvious at this point. I think we all know that. But the question is, we do need to dig a little bit deeper, right? Because the clear need is not being matched up with the investments. Minister Tan shared the numbers earlier. We need to double, really, our investments based on the IEA scenarios. So what is the critical issue? And I think, and I heard it a little bit this morning, but maybe not enough, the critical issue is that there is this emerging Asia risk premium that's just not accounted for, and that needs to be solved. So how do we solve this? I say we focus on two key things for energy transition. The first is really the idea that there is no meaningful transition in Southeast Asia unless we address the usage of coal. You've heard about our young non-retiree age coal plants, and I think also what's underlying that is that there's a really deep-seated, complex economic and social ecosystem that makes our coal plants really very deeply entrenched. I mean, Yuki and I have spoken about this, quite a few times. The long power purchase agreements, I think, are well known. What's perhaps less spoken about, but is really critical for the region, is the fact that, if you look across the coal value ecosystem, there are about 8.5 million people employed globally. 80% of those individuals are, concentrated in Asia. The second point is that I think we need to recognize that there will not be transition without transmission. So we really need to double down on our investments in grid infrastructure and battery storage because of the firming requirements there. And there, I think we have an issue for the region. Grid expansion, and this is based on IEA estimates, grid expansion in Southeast Asia requires an annual investment of about $20 billion per year, annual investment between 2026 and 2030. Battery storage technology continues to be too expensive for the region, even though the cost has come down quite a bit. So I do think we need some innovative financing mechanisms to take care of grid infrastructure and take care of battery storage. And we're starting to see some very interesting transactions in the Philippines, coal phase-out transactions, where the carbon credits that they hope to generate will fully account for not just transition costs, replacement with renewables costs, but also battery storage. And I think that's absolutely key. The final point I'll make is that, you heard about the vision of the ASEAN power grid this morning. And I think this is an absolutely key unlock. It's not easy. We are a very diverse region, but the market is watching. They're watching to see whether us governments get our act together and actually harmonize and make interoperable our standards, our methodologies. And if we can do that, I think commercial investment will come in. So the buck's on us at the moment, and the world is watching.
Thank you. Yuki, perhaps I can just follow on because it sort of plugs into what you're doing on the region. What is GFAN's role in APAC, and how is it different from what you're doing elsewhere in the world?
Yeah, thank you. So thank you to EMA for inviting me. So just a very quick introduction about GFANS. GFANS is a global coalition of financial institutions that are committed to net zero. And we have over 700 financial institutions around the world. And the role of GFANS, the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, is to support an enabling financial system that can really finance the real economy decarbonization. So in order to do that, we've identified 3 types of gaps in the financial system today. One is the data gap, one is the action gap and the ambition gap, and the last one is the investment gap. And GFANS itself is working more on the action gap, and the investment gap. The action gap is about how do you support the financial institutions to really finance the transition. So what are the new products and services that need to be developed and to be demanded by the market as well, and for the financial institutions to deliver that in scale and at speed. In terms of the investment gap, I think there's a lot of innovation that Gillian talked about in needing of more blended finance or carbon credits, and there needs to be a collaboration between public and private finance to do this, and for policymakers to really think about how to mobilize private finance in the energy transition. So in Asia, and GFANS has 3 regional networks. One is in Africa, the other one is in Latin America and the Caribbean, and the third one is in Asia Pacific. And we all have different priorities, and we also share common agendas as well. The common agenda is capacity building, because we believe that local financial institutions really need to be part of the domestic capital mobilization, and they need to work with the policymakers and the regulators in creating that enabling environment as well. So capacity building is a big kind of common ground for all the 3 regions. In Africa, there's more priority on blended financing and how to get the Africa renewable energy revolution going. And in Latin America, the biodiversity and nature, financing of those and using them in the climate action is the key priority there. And in Asia, we're very much looking at the brown to green transition, noting that a lot of speakers have already talked about the young coal-fired power plants in Asia, and that we are currently very heavily dependent on fossil fuel. So how do we get to a orderly and just transition, and what can private finance play a role? And in that instance, I think there's a lot of still questions amongst the private finance that they're worried about what is the right thing to do for them. That there's a lot of greenwashing allegation, and just to point out that a lot of these financing of the brown to green transition is things that you are hoping the finance will be helping corporates do, which are not happening immediately. A lot of these things are investments that may not result in immediate decarbonization, but that it will take time, which means that a lot of it is betting on the future. And the question is, what happens when it doesn't turn out the way you intended to? So there's a lot of greenwashing concerns, and we have come up with some high-level standards or high-level principles as to how financial institutions can assess the credibility of transition plans of companies, and also, especially in Asia, we've been looking at how do you assess the credibility of investments that are lower fossil fuel, like natural gas and LNG has been cited by a lot of speakers as being the stopgap. But the question is that a stopgap in all circumstances, or are there specific places where it can be deployed as a transition, but in certain places it may be blocking the transition? So at GFANZ, we've been discussing with financial institutions on what are the types of characteristics that financial institutions can ask the policymakers or the real economy companies on to determine whether the transitional activity is indeed driving real economy decarbonization.
Great, thank you. Elaine, turning to you. We heard about what GFANZ is doing and what the MAS is doing as far as getting financial institutions invest. What is OCBC doing in the energy sector as far as supporting clean energy? And maybe perhaps you can mention some of the transactions you're involved in.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Well, to respond to MES's call for action and also this morning's wide variety of speakers and the pressing existential issue that we're confronted with, I'd just like to highlight that OCBC stands ready to provide financing support. And indeed, we have done so. The power utility sector is a major and key sector for OCBC. We've financed a wide variety of projects, generation assets from traditional gas-fired power plants to waste-to-energy, rooftop solars, transmission, distribution infrastructure, including LNG terminals, district cooling, battery storage, and other utilities, including water desalination. In fact, we've financed projects in over 11 countries, and a third of our utilities exposure is currently in renewables, and that translates into 15 gigawatts of green energy that we've financed to date. We've also supported and embraced new forms of technology, new energy alternatives, carbon capture storage utility, large-scale battery solutions, floating renewables, which we hope to see much more in Southeast Asia. I'd like to just share 4 interesting examples, perhaps one of which is we financed one of the world's largest floating solar projects in Taiwan, located in an intertidal region in Changhua, where it's interesting that the panels will gradually touch the seabed and during low tide, and it floats up every 7 hours. And we really see how technology, innovation, and boundaries are pushed, given practical considerations and constraints in land-scarce Taiwan. And OCBC is also financing 2 large-scale carbon capture storage projects in the UK, one with transportation and storage facilities located 1.25 kilometers below the seabed, and the other is a combined cycle gas turbine generation facility with carbon capture facility. But these projects were really underpinned by clear regulatory support regimes and revenue support models, innovative technologies as well. And we expect that such transactional experiences to be particularly insightful and instrumental when similar CCS projects are developed in Asia. Now, closer to home in Southeast Asia, we've financed a portfolio of more than 60 rooftop solar assets across Vietnam. with EVN and corporate offtakes in a wide variety of industries. So why is this particularly interesting or meaningful? Because it's much smaller in scale relative to conventional utility scale projects, and it really demonstrates that competitive green capital can still be mobilized for small, albeit for meaningful, but albeit very small projects, because extensive PF analysis is still required. And now going beyond project financing of renewable energy, we have a sustainability office that has led the way in providing impactful as well as innovative financing structures. To call out OCBC's 1.5 degrees loan that we've launched last year, this financing solution incentivizes setting of clear carbon emission reduction targets that references internationally recognized science-based targets and decarbonization pathways, which is a lot more grounded and rigorous. And when these targets are met, corporates will benefit from reduced interest rates on their loans. Essentially, the power and the energy sectors are really key priority sectors identified for OCBC, and we will continue to place very high emphasis in partnering these businesses, supporting both renewable as well as clean energy with conventional energy with transition features.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you.
Turning to you, Dr. Chung, as an academic, what has been the experience in Korea as far as investors in clean energy, and what lessons would have been learned from that?
Okay, thank you for asking. So, as you mentioned earlier, that Korea has faced significant challenges in developing renewable energies. This country has limited land, high population densities, and making a lot of mountains is making it difficult to secure a suitable site for large-scale solar and wind projects. Additionally, Korea is energy grid isolated country, so preventing the import of renewable energy generating electricity from neighbor countries. Also, Korea has limited availabilities of resources such as hydro, and the biomass is further constrained the renewable energy development. But despite these constraints, Korea has made substantial progress. Over the past 5 years, the share of renewable energy in power sector has more than doubled. But this progress has been driven by strong government policies, such as a fixed price auction system for solar and offshore wind since 2022. So these systems can provide the long-term contracts that offer financial stabilities and have attractive significant investor to investors. However, achieving carbon utilities through renewable alone is a difficulty for Korea, as I mentioned earlier. So to overcome this, the Korean government has adopted a diversified technical neutral approach, such as developing the nuclear and clean hydrogen and other carbon neutral technologies such as CCS and energy storage systems. Korea is also promoting the carbon-free energy initiative to establish the international certification systems to promote the utilization and investment in those carbon neutral technologies. To further stimulate private investor sector investment, the government is also enhancing financial support through the creation of funding for renewable energy project financing and developing carbon neutral technologies. So those measures enhance the financial resources needed to accelerate the clean energy advancement and have Korea work toward its carbon neutrality goals. So in conclusion, while Korea is continuing to face challenges, but is making steady progress through strong policies, financial support, and diversified energy strategies. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Chung. Turning back to you, Frank, what does Canada have to offer the region as far as the energy transition?
Typical Canadians will not brag about much of anything. It's just not in our DNA. We tend to be brought up to be humble and respectful. But we do excel in a few things, ice hockey being one of them. But as it relates to our discussion today, energy is clearly an area of a great deal of expertise. We happen to be blessed with lots of resources, both renewable and non-renewable energy. So, and a very large land. So as a result, we have lots of practice to be able to do this at scale. So we feel quite confident to be able to have both the technology, the know-how, and the expertise to do large-scale projects, whether they have to do with renewable energy. We obviously have a lot of those going on. Hydrogen is one area of considerable activity, both on the east and west coast, gearing toward the Asian market. Bioenergy, we heard it referenced earlier today as one clear potential here in the region with a significant amount of biomass. Nuclear is one that was not discussed so much today, but certainly very present in our discussion with many countries and regions who may not currently have that currently in their power grid, but are intrigued about SMR technology in particular, and whether that could be a source of base power for GHG-free emissions. Another area where Canada is very active on is clean technology sector. We have over 3,000 firms active in this area. We've been cultivating that know-how for quite some time, and they do extraordinary things to meet our needs and the needs of our allies. And maybe a last one I would mention is critical minerals. We heard the minister from Australia mentioning this early on. We really see this as a key area where we do need, among friends and allies, to develop alternate source of supply. So Canada has quite a bit of it and are working very diligently in this area. And over and above energy writ large, maybe the last domain where I would mention that Canada has perhaps something to volunteer here for ASEAN partners is in area of financing. So that's, besides hockey and energy, that's maybe a third area where Canada excel is banking. And we have very well-funded banks and pension plans, which, thanks to their good work over the years, have accumulated a sizable amount of assets. So just looking at pension plans alone, they have about $2.5 trillion of assets ready to be deployed. And as of late, they've been devoting a larger share of their assets into infrastructure plays and energy investments, notably here in the region. And most of them actually have their offices here in Singapore and are eagerly looking for investable projects across the region. So, and in all cases, they're keen to partner with local investors and groups. So just a mention here that we may be able to help.
Thank you very much, Frank. Saba, just turning to you very quickly on Hungary, how have you advanced as far as the energy transition is concerned?
I see that we are running out of time.
We are running out of time, but we started 10 minutes, so I think we got 10 minutes.
So first of all, we already decided to finishing all the coal power station. Practically, we closed down almost all. The only last one is operating, but we will shut down within a few years this last coal. Secondly, that Hungary is really dependent from external resources. 80% of our consumption in oil and natural gas is imported, meaning that we have to intensify our domestic production, and we are doing this, and diversify the resources. So traditionally, Russian gas and oil was the main supply sources, but we want to change it and radically diversify our portfolio. What does it mean? That many new interconnectors, pipeline was built and still is being. That actually we have we are 7 neighboring countries, and within that 6 are interconnected with gas pipe to Hungary. And the major shift is the electrification, so meaning electricity. I just learned from today that the sun cable from Australia towards to Singapore and furthermore to the region is one of the key strategic project here. I'd like to share that we have a similar one, that from Azerbaijani and using Azerbaijani renewable sources, we want to make a big project, a similar sun cable under the Black Sea and flowing the electricity towards to Central Europe. So this is really, again, a good point when 2 regions could learn from each other. And what I have faced is already that we are committed to the nuclear solutions. So we are using heavily the nuclear energy, and we want to follow. And using this so-called SMR design, we want to make it and more heavily use the nuclear energy as well.
Thank you very much. Gillian, very quickly, what are your programs that you're rolling out as MAS to encourage the energy transition?
No, thank you. I mean, it's great to hear the progress in the different countries that are, covered in this panel. But I think the exam question that we really need to have before us is, given the challenges that we've discussed this morning, how do we scale up clean energy investment, right? Because we all need that, whether you're in the region or you're further afield. For the MES, our strategy has been to take existing financial tools that we've always had in our playbook and just reimagine them and make them better. I spoke briefly about the carbon credits for coal phase-out earlier. I won't go into that again. But another key area which Yuki mentioned is blended finance. And the reality is you can have the best financing ecosystem in your respective country. Yes, they will do deals, so it's great to hear OCBC's progress there. But the reality is when they look at a transaction, they're really weighing it up based on the risk-return a paradigm, and often there is a mismatch. So we do need blended finance to come in. We've had it for decades, but not at scale. So, last year, the Singapore government announced a $5 billion blended finance vehicle that we call FAST-P, and that's really about channeling investment into green and transition investments in Southeast Asia. And these investments will deal with some of the most pressing challenges of our time. But just very quickly, I wanted to share, because I think it's globally relevant, some of the lessons we've learned. The first is that we really need to be looking in terms of operating platforms, not individual transactions. That's because if you want to achieve scale, you want to achieve diversity of risk, aggregation of risks and returns, you need a platform. So that's one. Two is you need to give optionality, right? You have to give a range of products, a range of structures, because different capital contributors and different folks who need the capital have their very different needs. And the final lesson we've learned is about ownership. Unfortunately, a lot of capital that exists today, that sloshes about the global system today, is tied to very specific mandate restrictions. This is legacy to a certain extent. Development capital has always been earmarked to a particular country or a particular sector, but it doesn't work for a platform approach. It doesn't work if we want to pool capital together to achieve that aggregation multiplier benefit. So we do need to think about how we can break away from this project-by-project, transaction-by-transaction approach and think more broadly about a platform, and that means, I think, unlocking some of the legacy capital restrictions that we've seen.
Thank you very much. We've almost out of time, so just want to thank the panelists for appearing. I'm sorry we had a lot more questions we could have gone through, and we ran out of time, so thank you very much. Thank you very much to the audience. It was a very fascinating discussion, and we could continue talking for another half an hour, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy, for keeping the time. Thank you. I'm sure you'll meet our panelists as they socialize on the outside with you at the showcase a little later on. Should you have any questions, feel free to reach out to them, ladies and gentlemen. Now, moving on, we'd like to invite His Excellency Jeffrey Pyatt, Assistant Secretary for Energy Resources, Department of State, United States, to deliver his closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please invite His Excellency Jeffrey Pyatt.
Good afternoon. So my friend Frank DeRosier talked about Canada's facility in the sport of ice hockey, and I'll use an American baseball term as I stand up here as the cleanup hitter. But I appreciate everybody who stuck with us. And let me start by just expressing my tremendous gratitude to our Singaporean friends, our hosts, Minister Tan, everybody from the EMA, just a tremendous, tremendous Singapore Energy Week. And I also want to say what an honor it is for me to be here speaking at the close of this IEA forum, and in particular to recognize the tremendous importance that the Biden administration places behind the IEA's new office here in Singapore. Since its founding at the Washington Energy Conference exactly 50 years ago at the headquarters of my organization, the U.S. State Department, the IEA has demonstrated time and again that it is able to modernize and adapt to reflect the changing patterns of energy supply and demand. For the first 50 years of its work, the IEA headquarters in Paris was the sole office for a global organization that was born out of the recognition that energy security is an essential component of national security. And over the course of the last 5 years, our planet's energy systems have become ever more intertwined and more diverse in terms of the sources of energy and the technologies that lie behind that. This new center here in Singapore and the excellent slate of speakers and discussions that Dr. Birol has convened has represented the future of the global energy map. As we look to the next 50 years, Asia is going to play an absolutely pivotal role in meeting our shared energy security and energy transition goals. The United States has long recognized the importance of this region. The Biden administration's Indo-Pacific strategy was released in 2022, formalizing the U.S. commitment to an Indo-Pacific region that is free and open, connected, prosperous, secure, and resilient. Just a few weeks ago, earlier this month, my boss, Secretary of State Blinken, traveled to Vientiane to represent the United States at the East Asia Summit and the ASEAN-US Summit. He addressed many of our common concerns, including the situation in Burma, the importance of upholding international law in the South China Sea, and peace and stability in the Taiwan Straits, and the ripple effects from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. With our partners in Southeast Asia, we're addressing a great number of shared challenges, including the climate crisis and accelerating the clean energy transition. And this region is uniquely well-positioned to make a difference. Southeast Asia already accounts for 9% of the world's population and 4% of global energy consumption. But as Dr. Birol has pointed out in his remarks yesterday and today, this region is on track to be the 5th largest energy demand center in the world. And I was especially struck by Fatih's point this morning that Southeast Asia will be the 2nd largest source of growth in energy demand after India in the years ahead. But the story of energy in Southeast Asia goes well beyond just growing demand. This region can define both its own energy transitions and influence the transition on a global scale. Clean energy investment in Southeast Asia was nearly $30 billion in 2022 and will continue to grow dramatically, something I heard loud and clear in my meeting here in Singapore yesterday with many of the American tech companies that are headquartered here in Singapore. Take Indonesia, which last year accounted for over 50% of the global nickel market, or the Philippines, which joined us in the Mineral Security Partnership Forum at the UN General Assembly last month, or Vietnam, with which we have an MOU to cooperate on rare earths elements. All of our energy and technology ambitions require critical minerals, and we can find new supply chains and develop them responsibly in this region, not relying on any single country to shape the global market for clean tech. As we look to the future, we're seeing tremendous ambition from the countries of Southeast Asia, with most announcing their own carbon neutrality targets, and with Singapore and others targeting 2050 for net zero. At the subnational level, through the Smart Cities program, my team at the State Department is actively collaborating with Bangkok and Kuala Lumpur on smart grid modeling and digitalization tools to help policymakers develop a roadmap to improve renewable energy integration and more efficiently manage the energy transition to lower carbon technologies to achieve net zero goals. As countries pursue their carbon targets and broader energy transition objectives, we foresee the United States and our private sector continuing to play a key role in this region. Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, Vietnam are priority countries for my team's Clean Energy Demand Initiative, or SETI, the State Department's flagship program to connect companies that want to power their operations with clean energy with countries that want to produce it. The Philippines and Thailand have already signed letters of intent with 16 companies committing to develop clean energy options that are not just reliable and transparent, but also cost competitive. They understand that for energy transition to be successful, it has to make economic sense. One of the strongest demonstrations to our commitment to Southeast Asia, jointly with our Japanese allies, is the Japan-US Mekong Power Partnership, or JUMP, through which we've trained over 1,000 representatives from the electricity sector and supported 13 legal, regulatory, and commercial reform projects, including the direct power purchase agreement in Vietnam, which will allow it to capture growing corporate demand for clean energy. In April this year, my team's power sector program hosted a clean energy investment conference under the JUMP umbrella in Cambodia. 160 government, industry, and financial sector officials from Cambodia, Japan, the Lao PDR, Thailand, the United States, and Vietnam came together to promote clean energy integration, private sector investment, and networking as countries detailed their clean energy commitments and investment opportunities. JUMP is marking its 5th anniversary this year and will continue to make a difference in the region, notably through the piloting of near-term cross-border electricity trade for greater energy security in this region. Our assistance to Malaysia, for instance, has led to new procurements of battery storage, which is a key component for grid-scale solar and renewable projects. These efforts leverage the expertise of the United States and the ambitions of our partners in Southeast Asia, enabling economic development and energy security in a part of the region that will demand not just more electricity, but also electricity that is cleaner, affordable, and more reliable. As the clean energy transition will have enormous impacts for the workers and communities of Southeast Asia, a particularly important instance is Indonesia, where this Department of State, through ENR's Power Sector Program, is engaging with Indonesian policymakers in addressing workforce sector needs such as strategic investments, workforce training, and equitable policies to manage the evolving clean energy industry. All this progress matters, but we must be clear-eyed that the energy transition is just that, a transition. We understand the urgency, and we're accelerating our investment and deployment of clean energy. But as we build the energy system of the next decades, we also need to clean up the system that we have now. At the upcoming COP29 in Baku, we'll revisit the lessons learned from the global stocktake in Dubai last year. To be successful in addressing climate change, in addition to deploying renewables and clean energy, we must improve how we manage carbon and methane. The IEA considers scaling carbon management technologies to be a key pillar in limiting warming to 1.5 degrees. This means phasing out unabated coal power and accelerating zero and low emission technologies, including carbon capture and storage. And the United States is committed to working with our international partners, especially those countries represented here in Singapore today, to advance deployment of carbon management this decade. Secretary Morgan will take the stage momentarily, but I want to reiterate how critical our work is today. Recent years have put energy at the center of every leader's mind as they consider energy security and energy transition in their countries. It will take investment and innovation across a range of technologies, covering renewables, grids, energy storage, electrified transport, clean energy, electrified heat, hydrogen, nuclear, and CCS, to name just a few. As we build these out, I believe Southeast Asia will become a key player in all these industries and an example of how to deliver for their partners, their cities, and their people. And as you do so, the United States is ready to be your partner of choice in achieving your goals. Thank you very much, and again, congratulations to the IEA on this new program in Singapore.
Thank you, His Excellency. Thank you very much, sir. Well, as mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, by Mr. Pyatt in his speech, we'll conclude today's program as we share a special address by Her Excellency Jennifer Morgan, State Secretary and Special Envoy for the International Climate Action, Federal Foreign Office, Germany. Here it is.
Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be able to speak to you today, albeit virtually. And I want to offer a special thank you to our hosts and partners from the Singaporean Energy Market Authority for convening this important conference here in Singapore, which is a crucial hub for innovation, for trade, and for finance. This year's theme, A Connected and Sustainable Energy World, is a timely reminder that the global energy transition requires very deep collaboration, massive innovation, and bold action. And as we confront the pressing challenges of the climate crisis, Germany very much looks to Singapore and indeed the whole region as an economic key partner in the green energies of the future and industries of the future, and in advancing our shared goals of climate resilience, energy security, and sustainable development. We must focus on sustainability, which also we know can ensure security and affordability for everyone to keep a climate-resilient 1.5C aligned future within reach. We must think energy security, economic security, and climate security together, and we can. Now, looking back, we know that last year at COP28, we had quite a breakthrough in the global energy goals. And this means that the global shift away from fossil fuels is unstoppable. It is undeniable. In Germany, for example, in the first half of 2024, renewable energy sources covered 60% of our electricity needs, 64% rise of investment in renewables in 2023 in Germany. And so we know that we are on the cusp of that deeper transformation of the energy systems. The International Energy Agency tells us 85% of new power plants are renewable. But now it's really about how we move from that cusp into the positive tipping points in technology development and societal change at the pace and the scale required to keep that 1.5 goal within sight. This is really the most important question for all of us, whether it be policymakers, scientists, NGOs, youth, companies, citizens of countries. This is what we need to focus on. So finding the right answers to this question, of course, it's challenging, but it harbors the potential to bring tremendous benefits to many, and in many ways, as we look around the world and see the climate impacts hitting, we have no choice to work forward and do this together. So what, however, about finance? We know that looking at the global transitions, there is a substantial gap between global investment needs and finance available. We need investments in the order of trillions, requiring a truly global effort and an economic transformation both at high speed and scale. And there is no way that scarce public funds alone can deliver on these ambitious and necessary outcomes. But they will remain at the core of climate finance, and they need to be used in the most catalytic way possible. That's why we are advocating for a multi-layered approach to help raise the trillions needed, particularly for developing countries, within the ongoing climate negotiations. As we look ahead to COP29 in Baku, which is just around the corner, climate finance and finance as a whole will take center stage. and agreeing that new finance system in a way that moves us forward, including on climate finance goal that is fit for purpose, will be key. Also to raise our ambitions for our new climate action plans, how we put together the public, the private, how we reform international financial institutions is all absolutely critical. And in climate finance, we have to say, we know that the world has changed, and thus we need more high-emitting and wealthy countries to contribute when they are in an economic position to do so. You may wonder why I'm raising the topic of climate finance here today, but as Simon Steele put it very well, the challenge is to bring together what is happening inside and what is happening outside the UNFCCC to make the transformation happen. We need that kind of collective effort across all sectors, and the energy sector is very much at center stage. But it won't happen without all of you, all of us being active. So let me end by a call to action for everyone who is there today. We need you. We need your ideas, your innovations, and your will to cooperate with and without your states, organizations, and communities. Within those organizations, outside those organizations, we need all of you. And now is that time for bold leadership and collective ambition. Together, I think we can and must achieve a sustainable, connected, and inclusive energy future. And the imperative is there, the opportunities are there. So let's get to work. I'm very grateful for this invitation, but I really welcome and hope that you have a very successful time in Singapore at the International Energy Week, and look forward to seeing the action that flows from it. Thank you.
A strong call to action for collaboration going forward, ladies and gentlemen. With that, we come to the end of the Singapore IEA Forum. Now, we'd certainly like to thank all the speakers and all the panelists who have shared their insights with us, and thank all of you for staying on with us till the very end. Now, for those of you, we'd like to also invite you to the networking reception this evening at SIEW Connects. This would be at a very posh area called Milos at Shops at Marina Bay Sands, and that's from 6 p.m. onwards. Not to forget to bring your badges with you for identification to enter this very nice place. Well, we look forward to meeting you, ladies and gentlemen, for the IEA Ministerial Forum next year, 2025. And of course, for those of you who are going to spend some more time in Singapore, enjoy what the island has to offer. This is Ravi saying thank you, and it's been a pleasure indeed. Thank you.